Okay, this is Ike Willis and Bob Dobbs, July 14th, 2013. Okay, Ike.
Yes, Bob.
If you think of the exciting avant-garde imagery and arts of the 1920s, you probably think of painting, cubism, suprematism, constructivism, Dada, surrealism, all these arts. We think back, it seems the eye seems to dominate in our thinking back to the 20s and 30s, or even the teens. When you come to the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, what is exciting and avant-garde and an enthralling novelty? It's obviously music, right?
That's probably the age of the ear.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. Now, you have painting is the eye, music is the ear. Those are two senses. What senses would come next?
Probably the brain.
Very good. And that's
probably the brain, because that seems to be, because that's what seems to be happening here in the 21st century, especially the fact that I think that at least in the world, and in terms of what we're talking about, there seems to be right now in this country, there seems to be just a whole shitload of people who are, well, look, in America, they're still trying to get rid of racial prejudice. They're not having a good success with it. They're trying to get rid of, basically, we're trying to climb our way out of all the mistakes of the last millennium, in terms of wars, genocides, slavery, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And at the same time, art and music and things like that. And the thing is, all right, it's like this Trayvon Martin case. That's a great example of that, and it has everything to do with race, and it's the biggest elephant in the room, and nobody said a damn thing about it.
Okay.
And it's like we're trying to get out of the whole point is the only way to get to climb out of it. And the first thing to do, and then Frank would say this too. The main thing is it's like, well, the only reason that there's still trouble between prejudice, racism and stuff between white people and black people is that they're approaching it from the wrong perspective. Nobody's asking the right question. It's like, well, the only way the solution is very simple. The only way that white people and black people are going to start getting along and racism stops is that you have to start from the right premise. And the premise is white people don't consider black people people. See, and they're starting it. They don't consider us people, like human beings.
Right.
And we're not people to them.
Okay, but Ike, now I want to bring in how I see Frank in the big picture in this scenario I've laid out. You're right to say the brain. What sense is the brain? Well, I like McLuhan's definition. It's the tactile sense. If you think of the tactile sense, it's not the sense of touch, it's the interplay, it's the rhythm, it's the thing that coordinates the different sensory data. So television was an extension of tactility, not the eye, not the ear, but all the senses.
Right.
Because for many people with television, they could smell it as they watched the pictures, and it moves, so you got kinetics in there.
Exactly.
Now, America...
And the brain processes...
What?
The brain has to process since the development of television and then media to put on it. It's the brain that has to interpret all that stuff.
Okay. So here you have the eye beginning in the 20th century as radio, TV, and these electrical extensions of the mind. Tactile media are the hidden ground. But because we were a literate, visually biased society in the 19th century based on books, we were seeing the dying of our external senses, the eye and ear. So the first death was the supernova of the eye through art. Right?
Okay, I get that.
And then we have the supernova of the ear in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So the supernova of the last 20, 30 years is interactivity or tactile interplay.
Okay, yeah.
Everybody dancing with any media form that shows up, and the environments of it through the your iPhone's not shrinking the media more and more, so that you get empowered to edit it.
That's true, because with the advent of computers and the internet and TV and visuals. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
All right. So in that mix, Frank starts as a kid drawing. I think he used to put on puppetry, and he used to draw more than music.
Right, exactly.
Right. So he starts off acting out the 40s and 50s. He's got his eyes going. Then his ears get activated. When he's 14, he starts composing. And he develops the interest in the ear culture.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always looking at it visually. He's drawing. He likes drawing, musical notes and that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The next, so that's the 50s, 60s, 70s. So when the Sinclair comes in, there's Frank. He starts digitizing his music and developing the tactility that was always in his music. So here's how it's tactile. Tactility is the interplay of the senses, not any particular sense in itself. You could say it's like the mind that organizes physical sensory data. So this interactivity of the tactile sense is touch, kinetic contact, and then letting go. Touch, let go. Touch, let go. Sex is a good example of a tactile operation. All the senses involved, and if you're doing it right, it's kind of an interactive, sensitive call and response situation. Now, Frank comes in very quickly in the late 60s, holding up his hand. That's what tactility is, the extension of the hand. He's using hand signals, so he's implying tactility, not that he would come up with that term, but he's acting it out as a person, an artist, in touch with the rhythms of the present. And what does he play with? Rhythms. He creates a tactile, look at Lumpy Gravy. It's tactile interplay with speech and sound and cliches from the media landscape in an interplay that, for most people, still visually limited, visually biased, acoustically biased, find chaotic.
That's certainly true. That's very, very true.
So
the main questions that I always get from people is that how on earth I can do that. Right.
You see, that's why you're going to be able to fill in what I'm talking about here. So then, just to finish it up here, once the digital comes in, since Frank was always miming tactile interplay with his audience, with the interviews, with the mediascape, he was a very interactive artist. You know what I mean? The audience and his response to the audience was more what Frank was about than any of the particular operations, any of the particular technical stuff he was doing.
Exactly.
Always watching to see what was going on. He wasn't presenting a package.
And what was going to be the result of whatever small input that he added to it. Triggered. Mm-hmm.
All right, so this tactile interplay with the Sinclair in his digital studio, and remember, he's always showing his hand in a lot of the album covers. The big hand coming in, the image of tactility. So
very good, Bob. Now thinking back, that's very true.
Yeah. So when the digital comes in, I call that the Android Meeting. That's where technology comes alive. That's what we've actually we've watched the last 30 years, where people's physical chemical bodies been sidelined as they watch this digital supernova of incredible technology just swamp over themselves and the economy. And Frank stays on top of it. He immediately in the 80s, right when it starts to become popular, he gets his digital instrument and he starts massaging anything, anytime, anywhere for no reason at all.
Right.
That is a definition of tactility. Tactility doesn't have a purpose. It's just sculpting. And the sculpture of tactility is what he and Don brought to pop music, the sculpture dynamic, which is the art version of tactility. So you have this incredible interactivity of Frank digitally, and remember, wasn't it called Intercontinental Absurdities?
Right, exactly.
Programming the whole world as an art form. You know, he's I call him a satellite conductor, operating from the satellite level, conducting the whole world. And so I'm saying that Frank wasn't a musician sound guy. He wasn't an eye guy. He wasn't a dance guy. He incorporated those elements. He was a tactile artist. And
right. That makes very good sense.
Yeah, this explains a lot of the details. So now, to end my point, let's go to the play. The opera, he never got off the ground. Dio Fa. because if you read his plan for that, it's such an amazing tactile enterprise.
I've never heard of that.
You never heard
Explain.
of DIOFA?
No.
Okay, well, let me just read the entry on killuglyradio.com, give them a plug, the website. In the real Frank Zappa book, Zappa describes a proposal for a World Cup football opera. And this is
What? Say that again?
a World Cup football opera.
Really?
Yeah, called Dio, God, Fa,
Right.
Lies. God Lies. And it's in the chapter...
God Lies?
Yeah, that's the title, Dio Fa.
You're kidding.
Yeah. Now remember, he's being big. He's going to take on God in this tactile environmental situation.
Right.
All right, so Dio Fa.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is in chapter 18 called the Failure chapter. This is what...
Really?
Yeah, so here's what it says. Frank Zappa would have proposed, if he'd given them the support, to write, produce, and direct a special entertainment event for the conclusion of the World Cup football finals in the summer of 1990. In other words, like the Super Bowl halftime show, he was going to be the end of the World Cup finals where everybody's going nuts, whoever won, and be the show for
it.
it.
Are you kidding me? That's insane.
Listen to this, and it would be
When
fun.
did he come up? When did he come up with that? Hold on a second, Bob. Honey, I'm on the other line. Bob, long distance from Hawaii. I'm doing a thing for the interview. I'll call you back. All right, honey. Bye. That was Denise. All right. Wait. Now, when did he drop out of the? When did he do this?
This was scheduled for 1990, so he was thinking of it in the late 80s.
Oh my God! That must have been what we were gearing up for at the time he got sick.
Yeah.
At the time he really, really started getting sick.
In 89. He
Right.
had this ready to go after. It was almost like he didn't mind the tour, 88 tour stopped. He had a big project coming up anyways.
That's what he was talking about. And we never got to it because, he got sick.
Secretly got sick. No one knew in 89, but he told you.
Well, I did. I did, and then that's when we moved to Portland. And then after I moved to Portland, that's when he called me and told me he was terminal. Okay.
Right.
And we stayed in touch during all that time, and he was having plans about. That's what he meant by, because we were going to get back together, and it was going to dovetail with the 25th year anniversary of 200 Motels, and we were going to get the orchestra, the London Symphony again. And and Flo and Eddie and Vinny and
all right.
for this big worldwide production,
which he didn't tell you all the details. So let me give you the details.
No, well, we never got to all the details.
Yeah, because he got involved with Russia in 89 and 90.
Right, and also Czechoslovakia with Bob Havel and those guys.
Right. So listen to what he proposed. He proposed that this thing be financed by the city of Milan and the Italian Football Committee. It would have been, I'm just reading from the text here. It would have been an opera with the premiere performance in La Scala, broadcast by... You tell me when you remember things. Like, he said, did you hear that word come up at some point in the conversation? Right. In La Scala, broadcast via satellite worldwide, okay?
Oh, my God.
So look, the idea was to produce a script in English, Italian, German, French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Russian. The performance would include dancing in many styles, many special effects, and a fashion show. In the opera.
Wow.
So listen to this, it gets even better. The musical company would include full orchestral settings, chamber music settings, ethnic choral instrumental settings, executed via digital sampling and digital tape playback, advanced electronic music techniques, and rock music in styles ranging from doo-wop vocals to heavy metal. In other words, his whole career, his whole big note is what he was going to do.
Pretty much, yeah.
The music would be partly acoustic, partly amplified, and in some instances mimed to digital playback. See, acoustic, acoustic would be the folky painting period, the eye period.
Yes, the 60s.
Yeah, and then the amplification is the 60s and 70s. That's the new amplifiers. That's the ear part, the ear buzz.
Right.
And then the third phase, the tactile, is the digital playback. You mime to digital playback. interactive digital involvement. So it says that Frank was to write the story and lyrics, supervise the set design, costumes, and special effects. The city of Milan, through its sister city arrangement with Chicago, would engage the Chicago Symphony to provide the orchestral backing. The La Scala Orchestra will be represented by selected instrumental soloists. So you have some people from the La Scala Orchestra. The La Scala Chorus would be also featured. Zappa was to select the stage director, the orchestral conductor, and the featured vocal soloist. The negotiations for their fees would be the responsibility of the city of Milan. Their fees were not included in the proposal or budget. He has here a U.S. designer and staging company would be selected by Zappa to prepare the blueprints for the sets and special effects. The sets would be constructed in Milan in the La Scala Scenic Facility under the supervision of the U.S. designer. The special effects would be constructed in the United States and shipped to Milan. Now comes a part that's italicized, and this is the story. Okay, this is the Dio Fa. This is what it says.
All right.
What follows is not a complete description of the event, only a collection of ideas to begin with. All material is subject to irrational modification. Now, irrational modification is what tactility is. It sculpts the sensory data coming into the mind and sorts it according to whatever mysterious wills and agencies we have in ourselves, right? Our consciousness. Right. So right there, the material is subject to irrational modification. Yes, tactility is not running, it's doing it for any reason or whatever that it knows. It's following its rules. All right? So there it is. He's saying it's a tactile response to a collection of basically just a bunch of ideas to begin with. All right. The theme of the opera is, quote, millions of people believe football is God. But it is but it is said, at least in Torino, God is a liar. That's the quote. Dio fa.
Dio fa.
To present this theme, we propose to use a large mechanical version of the marionette character shown in the logo of the Italian Football Committee. And that would be the football god. So he took the actual logo of the organization, and that would be the football god. This football god marionette. So there's Zappa getting his puppetry in there. Always, his kid stuff. This football god marionette is afflicted with an uncontrollable nasal growth syndrome.
Oh no!
That's Reuben the Jets, 1968.
Oh my God. Conceptual continuity strikes again.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Continue.
All right. And this would be pioneered by Pinocchio and perfected by Reagan. The nasal growth syndrome would be pioneered by Pinocchio.
Wait. Started by Pinocchio, and what's the next?
Well, he has here, maybe it's the football god. This football god marionette is afflicted with an uncontrollable nasal growth syndrome, pioneered by Pinocchio, perfected by Reagan, Ronald Reagan.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
The lie.
Right, because whenever football god tells a lie, a horrible soft nose grows out of the soccer ball.
Right.
Which forms the head of the logo. With each new lie, another monk appears singing in Sardinian ethnic choral style, struggling to hold up the football god's repulsive nose with inexplicable religious machinery.
Oh my God. My God.
So the nose, so that's the Pinocchio part. So the football god is Pinocchio at the beginning. To conclude the production in a way that allows football god to have a tiny nose and live happily ever after, we propose, here's what the proposal is. As soon as the Italian national team is selected, a rock video is made in the style of the Super Bowl shuffle. Remember the shuffle and
of course, the Chicago Bears, yes.
No, the Cletus Auritus Auritus.
Oh, Cletus Auritus Auritus. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they perform a shuffle at the end of the story. Okay.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, a rock video is made in the style of the Super Bowl shuffle, using the players in uniform to render an Anglo-Italian rap version of Michael Jackson's "I'm Bad." So that's.
Oh no. Oh no.
So the rock video is made as soon as the team is selected. All right. This will be made into an instant hit. Okay, this is part of the opera. You make it an instant. I think he means all within the evening's performance. This will be made into an instant.
Of course, because it would be such an event would already be pre-announced.
Yes.
Worldwide as a result of the World Cup, because that year's World Cup frenzy that goes on every 4 years is going to be watched by every country in the world and attended to, and That's going to be announced that would be announced as a part of the World Cup ceremonies and the World Cup thing, and of course it would be an instant hit because it would be
everybody's tactilely participating.
Right, they're going to make. And plus it's going to be a video, and and oh my God, thereby making it an instant hit.
That's right.
So it would be an instant hit simply because of what it is.
That's right. Now, in the global theater, with satellites going around it starting in the 60s, all the old media, television, magazines, books, newspapers, radio, TV, bulldozers, oil companies, they're all inside this theatrical thing that's no longer the global village, it's the global theater. And Frank, as a satellite conductor, is orchestrating a day in the life of the global theater. And he's showing
exactly.
how collective marketing
and that dovetails with his invention that he was patenting for us to not have to tour, to be presented, to telecast, broadcast, simulcast our performances in 3D.
Yes, to avoid
into any theater or any stage in the world. Now that directly coincides with that. Oh my God!
Yeah, when was he telling you that? By the middle '80s?
88.
Right. Does that include the news show with Daniel Shore idea that he wanted to do? Yeah, the TV news.
Yeah, because I was there when he met Daniel Shore. I was standing right next to him.
Right. See, so this is an expansion of it. This is like a climactic one-time thing, and it's a big ad for Frank in the long run for his talk show. So the marketing of this, and everybody be all involved with it, that the whole absurdity would get the world audience that's listening more drunk on the whole thing, and they'd all start saying, yeah, this is an instant hit just for the hell of it. And that's a tactile interplay between the composer-artist and the audience. See, it's more tactile.
And the music industry and the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
Because the result of saying, okay, it's going to one of the requirements being that it be an instant hit will involve the music industry and its machinery as a response, as a call response.
That's right.
Tacticity-wise, making the media entertainment machine
a subset of the satellite conducting.
Satellite conduction, making it an instant hit.
Yeah,
and the process of it being an instant hit is also a part of him conducting.
Yes.
Holy shit!
and think of 30Apr2016, the guy with the military suit.
Oh, 30Apr2016. I love 30Apr2016.
Yeah. Remember him in 200 Motels? He's the military guy behind the scene playing with the Dobbs Frank.
Rance Mohammed.
Well,
Mohammed.
Yes, Frank is Rance Mohammed in this situation.
Right.
Orchestrating this whole global military operation. So it says, so this video is made an instant hit by all Italian radio and television stations. At the end of the opera, Football God sings his hit, assisted by I guess this hit that just happened, assisted by the monks, who turn out to be Italian national team in disguise. So he's already brought the Italian national team into it. And so, Frank writes, by singing I'm bad, you know it, God's nose shrivels to Jacksonian proportions, and he dances away. All right, that's that end of that phase.
Wow.
Then he says, Dio Fa, the logo for the opera itself, as it would appear on posters and advertising, was to be licensed as part of the opera plot, this is still part of the story, to a mysterious Soviet clothing designer. Here's his whole thing of helping Russia, you know what I mean? That he got into.
Right.
It'd be licensed to a mysterious Soviet clothing designer who plans to unveil the new line of Soviet fashions via satellite during the most dramatic part of the opera.
Right.
So this marketing is going to interrupt the opera.
Right.
As part of the opera. And it
a
said...
commercial.
Yes. And so it says that FC would attempt to make an actual licensing and manufacturing deal with the Soviets for real clothes to be offered worldwide under the Diofa label, with the garments making their debut as part of a choreographed fashion show with ballet and ethnic dancers as models, and the Soviet designer appearing on stage to be hugged by them after the clothing is shown. So he's going to do a marketing thing right in the middle of the plot.
As a part of the plot.
Yeah, as a part of the plot.
Oh, my God.
Now, listen to this. Other characters in the Diofa include Galileo, Tesla,
of course,
Newton, Leonardo da Vinci, Mussolini, Hitler, Stalin, and Elvis Presley as the devil.
Ha! Ha 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 ha! Are you shitting me? What?
This is what's right here. This is what's written. And then it says, Great Britain was to be represented by dancers dressed as football hooligans. So actually he's getting the Pope Catholics against the Protestant Queen in here.
Of course.
So he's got, Great Britain was to be represented by dancers dressed as football hooligans, misinterpreting signals from the Queen. And the Queen is a waving mechanical cardboard arm viewed through the window of a passing car. So it's a cardboard arm waving. That's the Queen. And they're misinterpreting the hand signals Zappa's conducting style.
Right.
As a political operation. See, this is, people thought in the conspiracy websites over the last 10, 15 years, they talk about, George Bush comes out and he makes little signals to his Freemasonic buddies through the media with the color of his tie and all that. Well, this is what Frank is sort of bringing in, that idea that the Queen is orchestrating her empire with this waving hand. You know what I mean? This mechanical hand.
Exactly. Which is basically all anybody ever sees of the Queen.
That's right.
She's riding by in her car.
Okay. Here's the final paragraph. America was, so you got Italy, Great Britain, and then America, which is a very tactile culture with so much electric media interplaying its tactility itself. So it's in between the Protestants and the Catholics, so to speak, and their empires. America was to be represented by a group of tourists who line up at a phone booth with a sign on it that reads, "Talk to God."
Right.
Each tourist would get to ask a single question. The all-important questions are, 1, did I wake you up? To God. You'd ask God.
Great.
2, what time is it there? There's the question.
Right.
Frank always wanted to know what time it was. 3, how much is that in dollars?
Right. Oh, no. Oh, my God.
4th question, asking God, is that a castle or what?
That's amazing.
Yeah. 5th question, what's the weather like there?
Exactly.
6th and final question, and each caller gets to ask one of these, right? They get to choose from these 6. And the final one is, when are you coming to America?
Right. Oh, man. That's fucking brilliant.
Yes.
Oh, my God. That's what he was talking about.
That's what he wanted to do. That'd be the final...
right.
Think of the football. They talk about the political football. An issue is a political football. It's a problem, You kick it around. So, to me, that is a perfect expression of the tactile interplay of all the media environments orchestrated by, quote, the CIA, whoever manages the secret committee that has to sort of keep the big picture going and kill a few people if they get in the way or kill a few nations. That is what he's miming. And
my goodness.
And it begins with Elvis. See, whoever is a big major stream star like Michael Jackson or Elvis, they are miming in the popular tactile level the role of the CIA orchestration of what I call the word that makes the market.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible? He has it all here.
Oh, my goodness. That's what he was. Okay, I got it.
What do you recall? Now, what are some things you recall that fit in?
Well, bits and pieces. See, every aspect of the play are the things that he was in the process of actually doing, because, and I think part of that was going to be the Thingfish movie,
right?
Because when he was on his deathbed, he was in negotiations with Whoopi Goldberg, who wanted to buy the rights to put on, because he wanted to put on Thingfish as a movie.
She wanted to do that
as well. Yeah, because Whoopi loves the album, and since we weren't able to get it staged on Broadway as a play,
right?
And think about what happens in Thingfish, right?
Yeah.
And all of that, so that dovetails with because we're doing a lot of hand signals and because the Mammy Nuns were the chorus line. You hear me?
Yes, exactly. Yes, I know what you mean.
The Mammy Nuns were the chorus lines because they were going to be dancing all the way through the play.
Right. So you see
Oh,
so you
my
see
goodness.
stinkfish is puny compared to this thing.
Yeah, I know, but see, Stinkfish was just one part of.
Yes,
It's the same thing. The same thing. It was like the.
It was about the marketing of the biological virus known as AIDS, whereas Frank in this deal file is showing the larger marketing globally.
Okay, and that was just that. That was just a that. Oh my God!
Yeah. Now he's showing the seamless
I think my
web
phone is.
of corporations and media and intelligence agencies and news agencies and the information environment. He's showing a seamless web around one event that is meant to trigger off all other kinds of marketing things.
Right.
And he's miming that. And he's saying, let me be that. I will take my reality and do it and show everybody this. Now,
Hey, Bob, I think my handheld phone is about to die. Let me hang this one up and we have to do this. We can
do part two. I will stop the recording and we'll do it again. I'll call the other number.
All right, I'll pick up the other phone and so that I can reach. Put this one on the the charger, and I'll have the other. When you call back, I'll have the other phone ready to go.
All right. Well, actually, so you have to just see. You can. All right. Let's just stop the recording. We'll do part two.
Yeah.
I'll stop this. Okay. Just a second.
All right. Go.
Okay, this is part B of our talk with Ike on July 14th, 2013. So, Ike, you just had your mind blown with this scenario. What comes to mind? What ideas and things you're familiar with?
Well, like I was saying, what brings to mind is that 6 to 8 months before Frank died, he called me while I was still living in Portland and said that this was in early '93, and told me that he was coming. It seems like his cancer was going into remission, and we'd be able to travel again and actually go back on the road. And he was throwing bits and pieces at me. Now I realize now of D.O.F.A. because he had always been saying that, well, I want to go back out with the orchestra and essentially have a huge orchestra / band doing a worldwide presentation that would ostensibly be the 25th year anniversary of 200 Motels, but combined with this new technology that he had just secured a patent search for with the Library of Congress, utilizing 3D technology, so that instead of having to tour from city to city, we could put the whole thing in a sound stage, at least our part of it, because this is also part of the president is his running for president as well.
Right.
That we'd have the symphony orchestra, we'd have an expanded version of the Mothers, and to be able to use this technology to be able to, and it was totally interactive in that we'd set up the whole machinery in a movie soundstage, and then be able to simulcast it via television and computer and internet into any venue in any city in the world, and adjust the size of the broadcast. Naturally, it's like if it was watching on a TV, we'd be in the size of a TV screen. But in a theater, because of 3D technology, it would be the same size as the band would be on a 40 by 29 foot stage.
Wow. So in other words, you wouldn't go to city to city, broadcast from this place.
We'd be at home here in L.A.
Right.
Being televised by 3D technology, so that if it's a small 200, 500-seater, an old theater, or a stadium, we could adjust the size of the broadcast, of the projection, so that it would be, with we'd be the rigors of the size a band would be on a stage in a football stadium. A football stadium, Bob.
Yeah, he would be saying that to you.
Yeah. A football stadium, okay? And that's the thing, because that's the thing. So now that makes perfect sense because that would allow DO5 to actually happen.
Yes.
Because during the World Cup, using that technology, he'd be able to conduct and also we'd be able to participate in such a worldwide football game, fashion show,
merchandising,
and oh my God, my God.
Let me give you a couple of conceptual continuities. When he was talking about running for president, he said he would just do interviews. He would just stay home and be available for interviews 24/7 and just run it from his home, talk and be interviewed. So there's the work coming, digitally just coming from one place. He understood.
Yes.
McClooney used to say that's the way elections should have been run. Everybody could run the whole thing in the fucking studio, over 6 months or a year and get rid of all this other physical body interaction that's stupid. That leads to whatever, stupid stuff. So,
going around with handshaking and kissing babies and et cetera, et cetera.
And they would just dialogue casually and show their ability to respond to whatever was happening in the news. And that's how you'd figure out whether the guy could be a good president or not. Not trying to state some stupid opinion or policy.
Exactly.
Now,
based on polls, based on polling, and based on just political footballs and buzzwords, and et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So Frank had the right idea how to do it. Now here's the other idea. Did you ever see The World's Greatest Sinner by Tim Carey? That movie.
Oh, you mean Frank's movie?
No, Tim Carey.
The one that he did the movie.
Yes, that's down for. Yes.
No, I never saw that movie.
Okay, Tim Carey, who was this great actor for Stanley Kubrick movies, and a good friend of John Cassavetes, used to be in a lot of his movies.
Oh, I love John Cassavetes. Cassavetes was great. Right.
So Tim Carey, he made this in 1963. When Frank is on Steve Allen, he mentions when he's playing the bicycle, he mentions the premiere, he says, of the worst movie ever made, or something like that, okay?
Right.
Which Tim Carey didn't like, but anyways, you can't control Frank, and he had his reasons for doing that. But the movie's about this, I don't know if he's an insurance salesman or something, but he starts watching the Elvis Presley kind of phenomenon. This is the mid-'50s. It's being filmed in the late 50s, early 60s. It takes several years for him to make it. So he takes on this is the movie world of Tim Carey and his friend Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson later said it was his favorite movie of all time at the time it got shown in 63. He said, this is my favorite movie. I don't know if he still would say it. But here's Tim with these actors, and they're watching this other kind of showbiz coming out of the radio called rock and roll, right?
Right.
And so Tim Carey, he decides, well, that's the way to get attention. So he becomes a rock and roller. He becomes so popular that he eventually starts a religion and declares war on God or something like that.
Oh, wow.
The world's greatest sinner. And that's the image of Elvis Presley as the devil is right from that movie, World's Greatest Sinner.
And by the time by the time Carey creates his own religion,
now he gets screwed.
Right.
And what happens, he starts going around and ripping off old ladies. He screws all these old, ugly ladies to get their money or to invest and all that. So it leads into a terrible corruption. I can't remember the exact ending, but I think it ends in tears, a tragedy.
But the result, D.O.F.A. God lied.
Yes. So, now, when I talked to Frank after he transitioned and I was talking to him through the medium, the Evergreens, I said, a lot of your conceptual continuity comes out of The World's Greatest Sinner, and he agreed, or the guy that was dead agreed. Anyway.
Right.
So, and you can see it in this movie. Elvis is a devil. Pop culture is the devil. Look at the Pope hates Madonna and all this stuff. And then, but then Frank shows how pop culture fits in with all the other corporations and the marketing and everything's a seamless web. And he shows it's not a global theater, it's a global membrane. Can we run from a studio? Which is always what Frank said. In some studio in Langley, Virginia, they're making
Exactly. Top secret laboratory.
Yeah, and he called Dr. Zircon's lab in Happy Valley.
Wow.
Think of Uncle Meat was a guy with a lab with the jets and the nasal growth syndrome, whatever.
Exactly.
So the whole thing.
Wow.
So I recently, a friend of mine saw the Philip Glass performance of some big opus, and it was lousy and boring. And this is the point. Frank would be and could think beyond these guys because he didn't have the particularities of values of this is low culture, that's high culture. He put it all in the mix. And
right.
that's the way society's run today. That's a tactile society.
Wow.
But each particular media content has no meaning. It's keeping the whole thing going,
right.
and merging and intertwining, and the secret lab orchestrates the whole thing. That's what Frank understood.
Which really hits to the heart of Frank's. The one thing that Frank was always really brilliant at is long-term thinking.
Yes. Who are the brain police? Who are the brain police?
Right. Just super long-term thinking. Holy shit! I mean, and being able to incorporate all of that and juggle all of those balls simultaneously. And
notice, and like you said, he'd have scientific magazines in his studio there. He'd be up on the latest technology. Are you saying that he invented a patent, or he wanted to patent the process of putting everything together?
No, it's his idea. It's his idea.
Wow.
It's his idea. I mean, the thing is, using what he knew about the technology, because remember, Frank was a very brilliant guy, and he was always up to speed
with
the new tech, what the latest technologies, and every new thing that came out, the manufacturers would always send Frank a prototype, so Frank could actually troubleshoot it and beta test it. He had the first synthesizers, the first amps, the first digital synthesizers, polyphonic synthesizers, the synclav. I mean, he owned the first one of two. Yeah, because we were in the studio doing Thingfish when the synclavier people sent him a couple of synclavs to troubleshoot and to beta test and to work the bugs out of it.
Now, did he have other industries sending him other things?
I think so. I mean, because I would be up at the house and I'd see things that I'd never seen, machines that I'd never seen before.
Yeah.
He would say, "Oh yeah, that's a so and so, and they're made by so and so, and it's supposed to do this, this, and this." Some of the stuff didn't work because it didn't go far enough, or
right.
You know what I mean? It didn't do quite everything that it was supposed to do. But the thing is, he still used certain things. And also, but the bottom line, he knew how it worked in terms of technology.
He could understand it, and he could improvise on it, or make a patent of it.
Which is what he would do. He would take the best out of whatever he was testing, report back to these guys, and say, "Okay, well, this works. I don't like this. Blah blah blah.
Right.
Now this. Sorry, it doesn't do what it doesn't go far enough, and it doesn't get the exact results that either you or I aren't looking for.
Right.
You and I aren't looking for. But keep trying, because all you need to do is this. Why don't you make it do this or that? You know what I mean? And that's how Frank was, because there was always things, boxes with tubes and knobs, and made by various corporations and stuff, but various companies. But as long as I'd always been, I'd go up to the house. We'd either be recording or sitting up there talking or whatever, or be up there late at night working on projects. And the studio and the house was just full of this shit.
Right, and books and stuff, and manuals.
Oh, of course, books everywhere.
Okay, so look, you take that famous play in the 80s, I think it's called Einstein on the Beach, maybe it's the 70s. You see, a playwright is dealing with old visual culture, painting, book stuff, the Shakespeare plays.
Right.
Okay, but Frank was
certainly a playwright as well.
Right, but because he was a chief focal point in the newest, greatest art form, rock music, amplified music.
Right.
These other playwrights, they couldn't do that. But he could take that thing, because that actually, rock music was the iconography and the drama in the global theater anyways. It already was a theater.
And Frank back in the 60s became an icon.
Right, and a devil.
Because that's a part of the game plan.
That's right. He was considered a devil by the right wing and all this stuff.
Oh, always. To this day, he's considered the devil.
Right. So you see that this play is this Giuffre is about himself And his process of taking the latest technology, and if given the opportunity, he would have done this, and he already was doing it on a small scale in his thinking.
Sure.
And what he was trying to say in his lyrics and conceptual stuff in his books.
He'd been doing it at least up until the time he died. So far, he had put in 30 years.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
63,
By the time,
63 to 93.
93. He had put together a good 30 years. I was with him almost 20 years of that. Okay,
Right.
so Okay, now see, I'm seeing. See, as we're talking, little bits and pieces.
Yes, that's what I want.
Are falling in there. Oh my God! And I was there.
Yes,
okay.
that's why
as a part of this. Okay.
Okay, so then you have Francesco Zappa, according to the dictionary, 1763 to 1788, the same period of recording. Yeah. Exactly, same years.
Because when he called me and told me he found Francesco. You know, just in his reading.
Well, Gail, he said Gail found it. She found
the reference to him,
right.
And then Gail, and then Frank, of course, dove right into it. Got all the history, got all the who his sponsors were, what time frame, what kind of music. He had Gail get the charts. Had to find the search for the charts and stuff like that. Yeah, I was up at the house.
With
during that whole thing, and he showed me the charts, and he showed me Francesco's history, just the whole shot.
Now,
I was there.
All right, it's good. Now the year 1990 for this. This is Frank just coming up with another great show. This should be Dynamite Show, Barry, for his launching his presidential campaign.
Right.
This would be his political commercial.
Right.
He says on Freako, one particular song is a body commercial to get more groupies or something, one of the songs in the liner notes. But you see, the whole process of what he was all about, he was the only artist, creator, thinking like the CIA, like marketing, like advertising, like the industry, like great works of aesthetic appeal, his own composition. The whole mixed bag. He's the only one thinking on that huge scale.
Right. That's what I mean.
That's why he's the best artist.
Right. That in terms of his long-term approach, and that's in terms of his long-term thinking approach and planning, because that's the key. The long-term planning.
Yes, and remember,
being able to
Remember in the circular for the Warner exec, hey snazzy exec, something 1971, where he lays out the conceptual continuity of the band and why he's not a normal band, and he talks about the long-range plans, and he talks about a town, and everything's orchestrated in the town, and then there's these little pins that are out in the Atlantic Ocean, there's millions of them, and there's one little pin that has a gesture from a studio in it. Do you remember that whole scenario? I could actually go read it, but it's quite well known among the Zappa files. This scenario of planning and sculpting. He talks about sculpting earth environments and all kinds of things. That was in 1970.
Really?
Oh, if you haven't, let me go down and bring that up. I mean, it's an incredible, but it's the long-term plan that you're talking about.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, because we would sit and talk, and he would. Let me think here. Because we would think about in terms of planetary, in terms of sculpting and planetary sculpting. We were in Germany one night, and it was like past show after the show and stuff. And he goes, this part of Germany. He goes, you're a historian, you're into geology and stuff. And he was saying, did you know that Germany, what we know as Germany, this actually used to be Sweden. Yeah,
who's he saying this to? A journalist?
Me.
Oh. Yeah, that's right.
Me.
Yeah.
He goes, yeah, this was actually Sweden. Starting, when European society was up and running and stuff like that, because they've always been fighting back and forth and various wars and things like that, and kingdoms and who's in charge here and there over the years. At one point in time, this was Sweden until the Germans, the Vandals, whatever at the time, finally drove them northward to where they are now. And basically it all boils down to, well, the bottom line is that that's a part of that political and geopolitical and sculpture.
Yes.
See, when you look on the map, you'll see the boundary lines are drawn up a certain way. But of course, there aren't lines on the actual ground. But this used to be Sweden, that used to be Russia, this and that, because I'm totally into that thing. I'm a map reader. I love maps. I've always loved geology and geography.
Well, yeah, that's why there's so many animosities in Europe. Because
right, of course.
Take the country of Prussia with Bismarck, that's not there anymore, but it was a big country in the 19th century.
Exactly. But this is what I'm saying. Frank knew that about me.
Okay.
He knew that about me. See, because I'm the only one in the band who always had a book in my hand.
Right.
I'm always reading. I'm always, and we would discuss. See, that's the thing. I could discuss anything with Frank. We would talk geology. We would talk geography and science and politics and music and religion. And then, but the thing is, whenever we'd have our conversations, it was all part of the same ball of wax.
Yeah, you were the Pauline Butcher of the mothers. He liked literate people. He liked people who read and could think. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And that's what we would talk about. That's why he kept me there. You know what I mean? That's why things like Joe and Thingfish and Hunch and Toot and all that stuff were evolving. And he'd go, Ike, here, have a seat. This is what I'm thinking. How would you like to be? Okay, look, I've got this character. Okay, or actually, no, he would just. Actually, he wouldn't say I've got this character. He'd just bring in sheets of paper.
Right.
And then I'd be the person doing it. He'd say, "Here, Ike." You rehearse it.
Yeah,
we just start rehearsing it. We just start performing it, and then when we get to this part, stop here, and then we develop the music around it, and then keep on, and then just keep going.
All right.
And then it would end up being Joe or Thingfish or Hunch and Toot.
That's right.
Or whatever. Yeah.
See, literate people have ideas. He would need to bounce. He's got ideas automatically, but he needs someone else who could respond or had ideas of their own to say to him that he could bounce off of. So here's
would be me.
That's right. So listen to this. This is a Warner promo circular from 1971, and it's called "In Case You've Never Heard of Our Group." So it's a letter to the Warner executives. Hey, promote us a little more. So I won't do the introduction part, but he has the executive asking questions. What's so special about this group? And Frank says, perhaps the most unique aspect of the Mother's work is the conceptual continuity of the group's, now this is italicized, output macrostructure. See, that's your long-range thinking. Output macrostructure.
Right.
And he says, there is and always has been a conscious control of thematic and structural elements flowing through each album, live performance, and interview. See, tactility is not just making albums. It's not just live performance. It's the talking. It's the ads. The whole thing is what he's an artist of all media in all categories. Right. So then he says to the guy, in about 1970, Earthworks were starting to become known. So he says, "Do you know about Earthworks?" says Frank. "Imagine the decades and the pile of stuff on them, subjected to extensive, long-range conceptual landscape modification." There's your geology.
Yes.
He says houses, offices, people live there and work there. Right. They even make movies there. Imagine that you could be living there and working there and not even know it. He's talking about the invisible environment of the global theater.
Exactly.
And he says, whether you can imagine or not, that's what my deal is. That's what the deal is. So he said, this is what's special about our group. This is the way we're thinking. So the executive response, Frank, makes this up, and he has the executive saying, listen, nobody puts together a pop group, simultaneously planning years of absurdly complicated events, lives out those events, then writes about it in a press kit and expects somebody to believe it. You're nuts.
Right.
That's the response.
Wow.
So Frank says, he just continues to explain. He says, the basic blueprints were executed in 1962 to 63. Preliminary experimentation in early and mid-1964. So he's speaking as Uncle Meat, molding the Reuben the Jets, which is the early Mothers, right?
Right.
It's
right.
autobiographical. Construction of the project object began in late 1964. Work is still in progress.
Right.
This is 6 years later, 7 years later. And then the guy says, the executive says, no wonder you guys never had a hit signal.
Right.
And then Frank says, I'm sure you realize that total control is neither possible nor desirable. It takes the fun out of it. The project object contains plans and non-plans, always the dialectic, but the dialectic is the content of the tactile molding, of the sculpting, because the tactile molder is a non-entity. It's a mind manipulating anything that's going on, recording what's ever going on. Do you see what I mean? It's plans and non-plans, allowing unforeseen things to happen. So the project object, it's project/object, contains plans.
Of course.
Plans and you were called that. This is your baby. The project object contains plans and non-plans, also precisely calculated event structures. So that's like a world.
Right.
Designed to accommodate the mechanics of fate and all bonus statistical improbabilities attended thereto.
Exactly. So it takes he left enough room to accommodate
anything, anywhere, anytime that happens.
For no reason at all.
For no reason at all.
Any kind of stimulus, any kind of political, religious, musical, technological,
spiritual, religious,
spiritual upheavals or non-heavals.
Right.
And whatever stimuli that just happens to come along at the time, the concept, the project object can assimilate,
incorporate, like the organizing function of the brain.
Exactly.
Like the brain, organizing whatever's happening. Remember in 200 Motels, there's a disaster in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the point is, he is not in. This is why he has Ringo Starr playing him, or the other people. There's no Frank Zappa here. It's
no.
It's the hand that is Frank.
Yeah, right.
And remember in Them or Us, when Moon comes up, the daughter comes up and speaks to her father. The father is not identified. Says some things, but it's the invisible tactile modulator, satellite conductor. You see?
Yeah, it's the potholder glove.
Yeah, it's almost. Did you say claws? Potholder.
No.
The potholder glove. The glove.
The glove.
Yes,
yeah.
That's the extension of the hand. The green glove.
The mitten on the cover of Them or Us.
Yeah.
Sure.
See, that's and that's the one he highlights. That's the sense he highlights. His hand.
Yeah.
Because that's the tactile sense. I mean, the hand is the closest to what the brain does in organizing, manipulating.
Exactly.
And,
definitely.
Right. So then the guy, after he says the mechanics of fate, there's inevitable stuff coming, but also weird improbabilities that come out of it in the middle. So the mixture of determined and non-determined from a third position.
Exactly.
Right? And invisible.
Right.
It's almost like Frank. When I did a dialogue with Tommy Mars, I said it was like working with a general, and he says exactly. It's almost like Frank included. He being he was a conspiracy within the band. He's like Charlie's Angel. Nobody knows who Charlie is. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
All right. So he says, so the executive, when he hears that sentence, he goes, yeah, sure. I'm supposed to sell records for you guys, and I'm a little pressed for time, so why don't you just tell me normal stuff? Like what your group sounds like, maybe. So Frank says, what we sound like is more than what we sound like. There it is right there. See, it's not the sound. It's the invisible, inaudible, tactile interplay of everything.
Right.
What we sound like.
What we sound like is the result of what we start sounding like.
Yeah.
What you think we sound like, we actually the result of our effect on the outside stimuli.
In response to our predetermined plans and non-plans that's organized 8 years ago.
Exactly.
So
in other words, we are actually a result.
Yes.
Which changes on a nightly basis.
That's right.
Of what went before.
He says he's a journalist. I'm studying the effects of the news events. He does a lot in my dialogue with him, where he explains how he watches all the different stations, gets different points of view of what's going on. You know, always invisibly orchestrating and creating a new pattern. So he says, what we sound like is more than what we sound. I'll do that again. What we sound like, it says that. It got the wrong letter. But what we sound like is more than what we sound like. We are part, just what you were just saying, we are part, an extension of the project object. We are not the whole thing. We're just part of it. The project object, maybe you like event/organism better, incorporates any available visual medium, consciousness of all participants, including audience. It's almost like ESP, consciousness of all participants, or at least knowing their cliche responses. So he's including the tactile response of the audience. All perceptual deficiencies. Look at that. He's including perceptual deficiencies, not perceptual excellencies, deficiencies.
Right.
And then he has the second last thing is God, in brackets, is energy. So he's including God. He's consuming God. And then he has bigger than God, the big note. And he says that's the universal basic building material. And then he goes, and other things. After saying all these big things, he says, and other things.
And other things.
And we make a special art in an environment hostile to dreamers. So then the guy says, I still don't get it. Art? What art? Rolling Stone magazine and all other groovy, important publications have convinced me that you guys are nothing more than a bunch of tone-deaf perverts. He almost predicted the perceptual deficiency.
Sure.
Tone-deaf perverts faking it on the fringe of the real rock and roll world. All you guys do is play comedy music. So I should believe this crap about a conceptual program spanning decades? Frank says, yes. Frank quietly says, yes. And then the executive says, you've been doing this stuff for 7 years? And then Frank says, almost 10 years if you include pre-planning.
Wow.
Pre-planning. That would be the accidental meeting of people like Don Preston and the luck of meeting Tim Carey, and then in retrospect realizing how he can use all that stuff. He didn't plan on meeting Tim Carey, but then he gets involved with the world's greatest sinner, and that becomes a basic metaphor for what he wants to develop. You see? It includes pre-planning. So then the guy says, so why didn't I ever know about any of this stuff? I'm aware and intelligent and everything. How come you never mentioned it? And Frank says, there are several possible reasons. One, maybe you never asked because you never heard any of the albums, so perhaps the long-range continuity would not occur to you. Or two, maybe you never asked because you never saw them others perform live, and the conceptual aspects of this phase, many phases to come, could not be described without you having seen many concerts. Or three, maybe you never read any interviews where this phenomenon was briefly described, producing varying degrees of semantic confusion in his interviews. Or four, maybe now is when you should know. There's Frank bringing him into the plan. All right, you should know now, not before. It's a need-to-know basis. So he's talking like a CIA guy here. Maybe now is when you should know. So then the guy says, what is it, like a plot or something? Not exactly. Like a conspiracy. He goes, not exactly. What I'm trying to describe is the type of attention given to each lyric, melody, arrangement, improvisation, the sequence of these elements in an album, the cover art, which is an extension of the musical material, the choice of what is recorded, released, and or performed during a concert, the continuity or contrast of material, album to album, etc., etc., etc. All of these detail aspects are part of the big structure, or the main body of work. It's all capitalized. The main body of work. The smaller details comprise not only the contents of the main body of work, but because of the chronology of execution, give it a shape in an abstract sense. See, that's what tactility sculpts. It sculpts the data into an abstract shape, which you perceive as consciousness. So the guy says, so you say you're aware of the overall shape of the group's output so far? He says, I say we're not only aware of it, we control it. It is an intentional. It is an intentional design. And then the guy says, "You think this makes the Mothers better than some other group?" Frank says, "It makes the Mothers different. Certainly, we do not claim that control of conceptual continuity automatically ensures superiority on any level." The guy goes, "What?" Then Frank says,
Exactly. What? Exactly.
Yeah, so Frank says, this is a silly analogy, however, here goes. He says, imagine the head of a pin. On the head of this pin is an amazingly detailed illustration of some sort. It might be a little thought or a feeling or perhaps an obscure symbol. It might just be a picture of a sky or something with birds in it, but it's on the head of this pin, remember, and it's infinitely detailed. Now imagine this pin is not a pin. It's a musical note with a corresponding physical action, like the secret raising of an eyebrow to add special emphasis. Even in a recording studio where nobody can see you. That's where this is happening. It's invisible. Now, imagine enough of these abstracted pins.
It's invisible because it's on the head of this pin.
Right, but it's also happening.
You can't see the head of a pin because it's pretty much almost on a molecular level.
Right, but the pin is a musical note with a corresponding physical action, but you can't see the physical action that goes with the note, which is the pin.
That's what I'm saying, because that takes place on a subatomic level.
Yes, that's Moo Masons, which he has in Uncle Meat, and all the subatomic metaphors he puts in there. Toads of the Short Forest, and I think he told Simon Prentice that Toads of the Short Forest refers to isotopes.
Wow.
And Simon was thrown with this. What the hell? But when you understand he's operating at all levels as a scientist, a comedian, as a physicist, the whole thing. He's doing everything, all knowledge.
Because he's the son of a physicist, after all.
Yeah. And
he's
so
the son of a nuclear physicist, after all.
And it's a movie based on what? People who aren't normal?
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't this fun? Just to review what he did is so much fun because you can, in dialogue, you get to hear it, you get to resonate with it. So he says, here's the important point: the gesture that accompanies the note, which is the tiny pin, is in a recording studio where nobody can see you. See, there's more invisible, inaudible tactility.
Well, sure, but you have to keep going further into.
Yeah.
In other words, you break out your electron microscope because you have to keep going further into and back. And
the illusion of that. Frank is satirizing all that whole scientific search.
Oh, of course.
You know, there's a great in Zappa comics by R. Crumb in the first couple of issues. It came out in the collective thing called Head Comics in the late '60s, where this scientist is looking through his microscope and he sees it. He finds the basis of life and everything, and he starts running around. I found it. And then the comic ends with a bunch of men in white suits carting him off to the mental hospital.
Of course, yeah, I remember that.
Right. Now I bring that up because in August '69, Zappa was interviewed by the LA Free Press, and Art Conklin, I think his name was. His first question, he says, "I see you kind of like Zapp comics," and he goes, "Exactly. I'd agree with that." So there's the comic stuff. There's the Zapp. There's these metaphors that Crumb was coming up. Zapp is incorporating that and developed them into a larger. See, Frank was the manager of the whole scene. He was the one who, like the CEO, who had the big picture, right? Okay, you guys, everybody does this, and he gets looks, surveys everything, all the arts. You know, Pauline Oliveri checking out everything. Her piece that he uses, talks about it in my interview, is really important. The upper and below invisible, inaudible, up and below audible comes together in a middle zone where this mash is, but we don't see the inaudible. And when the inaudible above or below vibrates into the middle mash, that could be a UFO or some psychic phenomenon.
Sure, so it translates from, now we're talking about a subatomic and interdimensional.
Yes, yeah.
It translates into our reality, thereby becoming visible for X amount of seconds or minutes of time as it traverses from inaudible to up audible, translating vibrationally through our particular mash up in the middle.
And frequencies, right. And that is, he's got it down better than Philip K. Dick did in all his novels.
Wow.
Okay, so in this recording studio where nobody can see you is this pin. He says, now imagine enough of these abstracted pins with the needle part chopped off to save space, so it's just the little head, right? It's even tinier.
Wow.
To fill an area as large as the North American continent and most of Central Europe, piled to a depth of 80 feet.
Wow.
80 feet over thousands of square miles, with these little tiny pinheads. Now that's like an ice age image of snow all over the planet or something, right?
Sure.
So he's saying, now imagine this. He's telling this the absurdity. He's telling the executive about what his group's about, and he's trying to get him to imagine this huge layer, 80 feet deep. He says, now imagine this area is not geometric space. That means visual Euclidean space. It's not limited to the literary space. It's tactile spaces. He says, imagine now look at this. What is the space made up of? A collection of decades. It's time.
Wow.
It's what are decades? That would be media content. You know what I mean?
Well, in other words,
an archive.
An archive. Okay.
His vault. His vault.
Yeah.
Imagine it's a collection of decades, this space, and he says in brackets, the exact number to be disclosed eventually. In other words,
wow.
He's still working on it, or he knows the exact number of decades.
Eventually.
Right. And so then in the interview, he writes the word pause. He says, pause. So he's saying to the guy reading it, pause. And then he says, the reason for explaining this process is to simply let you know it exists, and to give you, as an executive, some criteria by which to rationally judge what we do. It is not fair to our group to review detailed aspects of our work without considering the placement of a detail in the larger structure, or the long-range thinking. And then the guy says, why don't you guys just play rock and roll like everybody else and forget all this other crap? And he says, sometimes we do play rock and roll like everybody else. And then he puts in brackets, sort of. Our basic... Our basic stylistic determination is rock. Only sometimes it gets extrapolated into curious realms, which is every other thing we've been talking about.
I remember the phrase curious realms.
Yes.
Okay.
You see?
I remember that phrase very well.
He would say it occasionally to you, you mean?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, he would say, yes, he would.
And see, this would... And this is, the curious realms are the satellite conductor, tactile-wise, modulating all these realms. You know, that it's not just sound. It's not just rock.
Right, exactly. Because as long as I was with him, it was, I'd never considered us a rock band.
Right.
I never considered us a rock band because there was way too much stuff going on in there.
Yeah, you guys were an orchestra.
I was doing, basically, I'm just speaking from just me, myself.
Yeah.
I was doing many things to be in just a rock band. I was doing a whole bunch. He had me doing so many different things. Nah, that wasn't.
You were a playwright. You were an actor in a theatrical performance.
I was an actor and an author as well, because Frank basically pushed me to help develop what he had initially, ostensibly, had me go up and perform.
Well, that's tactility. That his group members had a tactile relationship to him. He'd take remember, some of them go complain. The early members, he ripped us off.
Yeah. They say Frank would steal. He'll steal anything.
But it was a tactile interplay with you and his mind and your mind and all that and your talents.
Well, that's the thing, because essentially my job would be to take this little sheet of scrap paper and basically, initially, it would be all right. There'd be a couple of verses or a couple stanzas, okay, and then he would hand it to me and give me my initial chords, a couple of chords, a couple of single note lines.
You would write that down? You'd write that down?
And a chorus. Well, no, I mean he would write down. So he would write down a couple of two verses.
Right.
4 lines here, 4 lines there, with a chorus, maybe. Maybe a chorus.
Right.
Sometimes a chorus hadn't existed yet, but he would hand me so far what we're thinking. Okay, that's like Joe's Garage. That's how Catholic Girls.
Right.
That's how most of the songs that you ended up hearing me singing, starting with Joe's Garage. Now he would hand me that and say, okay, sing this and this. Sing this line first, then let the music go by, or the next part, or stop there, and then come back in with the second line over here when we get to this point, okay?
Yeah.
And then he'd say, in the middle, and when we get there, just either hold off there or, see, I have this habit of, I would like hum or do like a verbal phrase, or just singing along to myself, or along with the music, because it sounded so great and it was so new. And he'd go, keep that. I like that. Sell that tune.
Sell that
Okay.
tune. In other words, isn't that like Roland Kirk, one of those guys, grunting and humming? That's what you do.
Yeah. Or Errol Garner.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
And basically like Outside Now. Essentially, I created the whole melody. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, he just gave me the words.
Right.
He says, do the melody, whatever. It's in this key, okay, and it's in this time signature. But here's a few words to work with. Here's like about to 4 chunks of these executives fluke the fuck out of me, and it's been a long time to go, blah blah blah. And then after that, basically he gave me those, but he says, well, there is no melody. You do it. Okay?
Right.
You do the melody. Sell that tune. So that became our operating. Whenever it was time to record an album, basically Sell That Tune became my operational instructions.
Okay, let me interject here. Remember at the beginning of the deal for opera, he says it starts off with a few ingredients or a few things.
Right.
That's what he did the same thing with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. A few ingredients.
Yeah.
Then that's all it takes. That's all it takes. Because then interaction begins to occur from there based on each individual member's interpretation, based on those few ingredients at the beginning, which really now, thinking about it, it's really even the beginning isn't the beginning. It's just picking up at a certain place as a result of in terms of tactility.
Yes.
Oh, I see. It's picking up at a certain place, coming from
the proportions whatever's going on that day determines the proportions and the context. That'll change the next day.
That day, at that time, in that particular decade, at that particular year.
Now listen.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, what does it sound like? This is a way a guerrilla group or a terrorist cell would do it. Of course. So Frank. Now here's the metaphor. He knows that the real control is not the Vietnam War or whatever's going on to bomb some third world country. The control is in the pop culture. And that Elvis is a guerrilla group, or any new band, the British Invasion. That's where the warfare, the software warfare is going on, and he knows it's a war, and he's treating his band as a war unit. Nobody else did that. And then satirizing the process as he did it.
Right.
I mean, that great opening scene, I think it's the opening scene in 200 Hotels, where Bickel comes out, a military guy, with his steaming briefcase, and he's going to give instructions to the Frank Zappa, Ringo Starr character. Well, why? That's like the military guy telling you guys about the AIDS virus. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, let me just finish up the point here. So he says, where are we? The rock gets extrapolated into curious realms. And then the guy, executive, says, you probably get into that classical rock, real intellectual with ugly chords and the beat's no good. Frank says, any association we might have with, quote, serious music, unquote, has to be considered from a rock viewpoint because most of us are strictly rock musicians. There is also the element of humor to consider. So then the guy, his last comment is, you guys could never really play any good rock and roll. You're not serious enough. You couldn't even play any good serious music because you're not serious enough. Have you even considered employment? Have you even considered employment in another field?
Right.
So Frank responds soberly, like he is the head of the CIA, kind of just responding to this idiotic person. I would like to bring to your attention at this time one of the basic tenets of our group philosophy. Then he has in capital letters. It is, in spite of all evidence to the contrary, theoretically possible to be heavy in quotes, and still have a sense of humor. That's all capitalized. We direct this specifically toward people who suffer feelings of ambivalence when given an opportunity to laugh at themselves.
Right.
And another precept which guides our work. Somebody in that audience out there knows what we're doing, and that person is getting off on it beyond his or her wildest comprehensions, wildest understandings, beyond the wildest understandings.
Exactly.
That could even be about himself, that he's doing
this.
This.
No, it certainly was. It certainly was.
And he has to. He knows how to watch and learn and respond to the unforeseen. What did he call it? There was the unpredictable. Oh yeah, statistical improbabilities attended there too. Like bumping into Sting in the lobby and getting him to sing in the concert that night. Just things like that.
Right.
I know he played in '70. Around this time, he brought the whole football team, the Ottawa Rough Riders, I think they were called, out on stage because he bumped into them at the airport and got them to come to the concert.
Right.
See, he was trying to include everybody, which is what Dio finally gets to do. It includes the whole globe.
Wow. That is brilliant. That is absolutely fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, hold on. Let me see what time it is here. God damn it! I got it. Shit.
No, we've done a good performance here. This has been good.
Okay, let's cut it. Let's stop it here.
You know what? We ought to think about, if I actually keep getting millions of dollars, maybe we should do this ourselves. Put on this whole thing.
Well, look, Bob, it's gonna end up being that way anyway.
Yeah.
You realize we are actually going to. But we are going to actually end up doing it ourselves.
I think so. So we'll keep this. We will keep this. We will not release this right now. What we just said, right? Or would you want to?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
I think if I send you a copy, if you could send it to Tommy or a couple of these guys and say, "Hey, join in with us and talk about."
That's why I want to see Guy. That's why I want to talk to Guy.
Yeah.
Talk to Guy. All right, hold on a second. Somebody's beeping, and I think it's Denise. Hold on.
Okay. We're just taking a break here, waiting for Ike to come back, but this is the beginning of the symposium leading to maybe a mega project. So we hope you're interested. Waiting for Ike to come back. Matter of fact, no, I want to get what we say on recording. So, anybody who's listening, what do you think of that? I'm going to read how this Warner circular begins. We actually didn't do that. He says, "Hi, we're the Mother's Invention, or just plain Mothers. We like to make that clear so you don't get confused with the Mother's Brothers campaign that Herbie called you guys about and said, 'What's the deal?' To make it very plain, verging on redundant, we are not the Doobie Brothers, nor do we have any connection with Mother Earth, Cat Mother and the All Night Newsboys, and or every mother's son. With all the rock and roll groups you got, we can understand the sort of lonely confusion a busy executive must experience while attempting to make rational judgments about things like good or bad taste in an ad campaign. We like you. We understand. Our group has been together since late 1964. During the past 7 years, we have released 10 albums. FZ has released 2, and MGM Verve, that other company, has repackaged 3 anthologies against our wishes. Maybe you know, maybe you don't know about our plan for the release of the historic 9-disc History and Collected Improvisation of the Mothers around Christmas or after the first of the year. Maybe if you're in the promotional areas of W.B. Kinney Entertainment Factory and heard about this unprecedented release, you might have scratched your head and mumbled to your buddies at lunch, quote, 'I never heard of these guys. Not supposed to promote a 9-disc history album?' I mean, I heard of them a little bit, but I never really heard of them. I mean, so who else ever heard of them? And they should care? Some group dumping 9 fucking albums during the Depression and everything?" End of quote and complaint by the executive. And Frank says, "Maybe you talk to somebody else later at the office. Maybe you ask them more reasonable, intelligent questions. See specimen above. Maybe some of the other questions went like this." And then he proceeds to do all the stuff that I read. So, should we play some Frank music just to fill it in? Let's see what we got here. iTunes is bouncing up. My 1,200 Zappa songs are coming up in my computer. So we would... Oh. All right. Actually, he disconnected. So I'm going to stop the recording.